This is Katrin with Disability Rights New York. Welcome to our podcast, Empire State of Rights Closed Captioned. We are here to bring you information on the most relevant topics regarding disability rights and advocacy. As New York State continues to address the coronavirus pandemic, Disability Rights New York will be recording podcasts specifically targeted at bringing you up-to-date information and resources, and we will do our best to get you information as it changes. If there is a topic that you would like us to address, please comment below or email us at podcast@drny.org. Today we welcome DRNY staff advocate Helen Charland. She's here to discuss New York State election date changes due to the coronavirus or COVID-19 pandemic. Helen, how are you today?
I'm doing good, thanks. I hope you're doing well.
I am, and thank you for joining us today. So much is changing on a day-to-day basis. One of the big things that has happened is that we're changing dates when it comes to elections, specifically New York State primary. Let's get into that, and let's start talking about what election dates have been changed.
Yes, so a few important election dates have changed. The presidential primary has been moved to Tuesday, June 23. State and federal primary elections will also be held on June 23, and special elections will be held on June 23 in the 27th Congressional District, 50th Senate District, in the 12th, 31st, and 136th Assembly Districts.
So one of the things that is new this year is early voting in many more districts in New York State. Will there still be early voting for this election? And how can someone find out if their polling place will be doing early voting?
So there will be early voting across New York State. So every county will still hold early voting. And it's important to note that early voting is held at select polling places and at select times. Early voting will start on Saturday, June 13 and run through Sunday, June 21. To find your early polling place location and hours of operations, listeners should contact their local county board of elections website or office.
So we talked a little bit about this when it comes to deadlines being extended for registering to vote or changing your party enrollment. In past podcasts, we've talked about this a little bit, but let's talk about it again and talk about why this date is different than any of the other dates that are changing.
So certain deadlines have been extended. If you are registering to vote for the first time, you have until Monday, May 29 to mail in your voter registration form. The Board of Elections office must receive your voter registration form by Friday, June 3. Also, if you have moved to a new address, you have until Friday, June 3 to change your voting address to update that information. However, the deadline to change your political party enrollment for the primary election has not been extended and has already passed. The deadline to change party enrollment was February 14.
That's good information to know. Now, are people still going to be able to vote through absentee ballot? Has anything about that changed?
People will still be able to vote via absentee ballot. However, there is new updated information amid COVID-19. In New York State, you generally have to have an excuse to vote via absentee. Some of the excuses include being out of the county on election day or having a temporary or permanent disability or illness. There is currently a pending Senate bill called S8015A that would expand the term illness to include the spread or potential spread of any communicable disease during a state of emergency. If this Senate bill is passed, then absentee ballot voting would be extended to virtually anyone during the COVID-19 pandemic. And you're able to track the progress of Senate Bill S8015A on the New York State Senate website. And you also have the opportunity to leave a comment to say what your thoughts on the bill are and say whether you are for or against it. There are specific counties in response to COVID-19 that have already expanded their absentee voting programs. If any of our listeners are from Erie and Cayuga counties, anyone from those counties who is concerned about COVID-19 may vote via absentee ballot. And if you'd like more information, may visit the County Board of Elections website. And lastly, for going back to deadlines related specifically to absentee voting, You have 1 week before the primary election to submit an absentee ballot request, and you have until the day before the election to mail your completed absentee ballot to the County Board of Elections office.
So let's talk about the New York State presidential primary election on June 23rd. Who's eligible? Who can vote in that and who cannot?
If you are a U.S. citizen, 18 years old, resident of New York State, not deemed mentally incompetent by a court, not claiming the right to vote anywhere else, not in prison, and are registered to vote, you are eligible to vote in the June 23 primary. If you are on parole for a felony conviction, you should check with your parole officer and local county board of elections office to see if you have received a pardon by the governor to vote. And one thing that's important to remember is that New York State has a closed primary system, meaning you can only vote in the primary election for the party that you're registered for. So you're only able to vote in the presidential primary or any of the primaries for the political party that you are registered for.
So if you're not registered for a party, you cannot vote in the primary. Is that correct?
That is correct. And it also means that if you are registered as a Republican, but you would like to vote in the Democratic primary, you are not able to do that. You're only able to vote in the Republican primary.
And so, how can someone find out if they're registered in either party or if they're even registered to vote? If someone's not registered, what do they need to do to get registered and to find out where they're registered?
Great questions. So you can check your voter registration status by either contacting your local Board of Elections office or by going to Voterlookup.election.ny.gov. If you're not registered to vote, you may register online at the DMV website, or you can print and mail in a voter registration form to your local Board of Elections office. You can find the voter registration forms online at your county or the State Board of Elections website.
So we just had another extension of the timeline for New York State being on pause due to COVID-19. What's going to happen if this is still happening with these new dates? Is there a process or is there any talk of how this whole process will proceed if the pause, New York State being on pause, continues past the date that we've been given?
Like most things at the moment, we're not sure and only time will tell. No decisions have been made as of yet. We'll just have to wait and see what the governor and the state and the local board of elections decide to do if this is the case.
And is that a decision that they make together, or is it a unilateral decision that's made by one body?
It's somewhat tricky to answer that because the governor has the authority to make that decision on his own. He is able to say, we're going to a full vote by mail system. He has that executive authority. However, it may also go through the traditional steps and processes like Senate Bill S8015A that is going through the traditional how a bill becomes a law. It still has to be approved by the Senate and the Assembly. So it depends. The authority is there. Whether or not the governor chooses to act on that authority or use it is a question I can't answer.
So there has been discussion about whether it's New York State or the country as a whole going to a full-on vote by mail system. Can you give any insight as to what that would look like? And is it something that would be looked on as favorable or not favorable?
So New York State is currently in the process of switching to a no excuse absentee ballot vote by mail system. It is pending a constitutional amendment and could be on the ballot as early as 2021 to vote on. With that being said, New York State doesn't have the infrastructure to leave the counties responsible for switching to a completely vote by mail absentee ballot system. However, New York State could benefit from what's called a centralized vote by mail system. And that would look like is having handfuls of regional offices throughout the state that are able to handle the influx of all the mail ballots from every county in the state. So for instance, there may be an office in New York City, in Albany County, in Erie County, and St. Lawrence County, and those offices would handle the counting of all of the ballots. There is a great resource called voteathome.org, and they provide examples of, depending on your state's current laws and the infrastructure that's in place, what switching to a vote by mail system would look like, most practically speaking, for your state's current situation. One thing that I would like to add about voting at home and absentee ballots is, in New York State, absentee ballots aren't fully accessible. So even if New York State switched to a primarily vote by mail system amid COVID-19, there would still need to be at least one polling place open that has an accessible voting machine available for voters who are unable to use the absentee ballot independently. So it gives them the option of being able to go to the polls and vote independently with the assistance of a ballot marking device.
That's great information, Helen. Thank you so much for your time today. This is a huge issue, and certainly this is not going to be the last time we talk about it as the pandemic continues. We will list all of the resources that you gave us in the description of the podcast. Thank you again for your time today.
Thank you so much.
Empire State of Rights Closed Captioned has been brought to you by Disability Rights New York, your source for disability rights and advocacy. If you enjoyed our program, make sure to subscribe, like, and share this post. If there is a subject you would like us to discuss, please email podcast@drny.org or comment below. Tune in next Wednesday, where we'll bring you more information on disability rights in the state of New York. The closed caption version of this podcast is available on our YouTube channel. To listen to more Empire State of Rights closed captioned, follow us on Apple Podcasts and Spotify.